Welcome to the 6th episode of the Northern Art Podcast with me, Ant Cosgrove. As usual, thank you for all the encouraging messages and positive feedback, and I really hope that you enjoyed the episode today. The artist that we're going to be discussing today is possibly one that you've not heard of before, but his story is something that I've thought a lot about over the last few years, so this is a really good opportunity to be able to tell it to you. My guest is the nephew of Norman Cope, an artist from Stoke-on-Trent. Norman was born in 1925, and today we will learn more about his student days in Burslem and in Edinburgh, his work, as well as the artists he associated with. My guest is extremely passionate about his uncle's legacy, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about it today. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Michael Cope. Hi Michael, you okay?
Hello Anthony. Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Very good. Yes, we've hooked ourselves up on Zoom, so we got there. So we're having this conversation today about your uncle. So obviously, your uncle Norman was the brother of your dad, Stanley. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. And when did you first learn that you had an artist in the family?
Well, it goes back to the 80s, really. I mean, when we were young, when I was a teenager and so forth, my father always told me that he'd got a brother, or he had a brother, that was quite a good artist. He never really spoke about it too much.
Right, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Because obviously there was a lot of hurt that went on in the family.
Yeah.
I think when I first started getting a little bit interested was when Norman and Stanley was my father.
Yeah.
When the mother died. She died in 1970.
Right.
And that's when I first started learning about Norman.
Right, okay.
His mother always had a few sketches on the wall, but nothing elaborate, right, okay, compared to some of the work he did. It was just simple sketches. And one of them, for instance, was a church in Rome that he sketched when he was about 12.
Wow.
Anyway, time went on, and I was never really that interested at the time.
Yeah.
But when my father died in 1988, that's when I really started getting interested, because I recovered all of Norman's work, which was locked away in the loft of his house.
Right, okay.
Previous to that, it was all locked away in his mother's house in Fenton, which he wouldn't allow anybody to go in the room.
Wow.
That's how I first started getting involved, and when my father died, obviously I was clearing out a few things, and I recovered a bunch of letters from his desk that were wrapped in string. And I said to my mother, "Well, what are these?" And she said, "Oh, those are letters that your father recovered from Norman's place in Edinburgh, because he went to the Edinburgh College of Art, of course."
Yes.
I never thought any more of it. What I did, I basically transferred those letters into my desk drawer, never opened them.
Right.
But what I did when I recovered the work, obviously, I'm no artist myself, but my sister's a good artist and my father was a good artist, but obviously not as good as Norman. But there was a few photographs in the work that I recovered, and also a sketch of Arthur Berry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called Portrait of a Fellow Student. And that's when I actually wrote to Arthur Berry, and that was back in 1988. And I sent him copies of the photographs and the portrait. I retained, obviously, the real ones. And Arthur wrote back, and that's when we started developing a bit of a relationship. I never actually met Arthur Berry,
right, but
we spoke and we wrote letters, and that was it, really. Anyway, as time wore on, I eventually opened the letters in 1990, which was 2 years later. I thought it was about time I opened them.
Yeah.
And it was full of history. Letters from Arthur Berry, a lot of letters from his mother and my father. But the letters from Berry were full of richness and humour.
Yeah.
And also there was letters from other people, John Hancock at the time, and a sailor who he befriended in Edinburgh named John, who I could never trace.
Yeah.
But John Hancock was difficult to trace, and that's when I started getting involved with Arthur Berry a little bit more, because I could not trace John Hancock. Mm-hmm. And Arthur phoned me one day and said, "You'll never find him. He's changed his name." He changed his name to John Shelton. I don't fully understand the reasons behind that, and I don't. Somebody must, but anyway, somebody told me that it was following a dispute in the family.
Right.
And
Okay.
he changed his name to Shelton because he was born in Shelton.
Yeah.
I also wrote to John Shelton, as it was, and he returned letters. And that's when I started piecing together and started doing more research, really.
I mean, it's an incredible thing. I mean, we'll just discuss Norman's life then, if that's okay. We'll go back to sort of your discovery of the letters and sort of, what you did with those later on. Now, Norman was born in 1925. Do you have any history on him at all as a youngster at all, as very pre sort of going to the Burslem School of Art? Do you know anything about his very early days at school or anything? Is there anything about that?
I did actually trace a guy that went to school with him.
Right. Okay.
He was named Ernest. I've got his name somewhere. I can't remember his surname. Yeah. And he was still alive at the time. He was 89.
Wow.
He was 80 something. And myself and my sister actually went and spoke to him. Mm-hmm. And he told us about Norman being at school, and he was always, speaking at school and some of the things that they got up to at school. He did actually say one thing that was slightly interesting. I mean, he did actually say that he didn't seem close to my father, which was Stanley.
Right.
Which I found, odd, but that's what Ernest said. And as I say, we did meet up with him. But we do have loads of sketches and paintings and things dating back to when he was 10 and 11.
Ah, right. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. And we've still got all those in the family, obviously, because it wasn't stuff that you could put on in an exhibition. Yeah. Well, you could. I mean, I'm really interested in it. I mean, for instance, he used to do a lot of pencil sketches. Mm-hmm. And he did a full set of sketches of generals from the war, Lord Haig and a few others who I'd never heard of.
Right.
And my sister's still got those. So there's a load of work and also some of the work that he did, when he was going to night school. There's a lot of nude sketches that we've got. I mean, most of the modern work we've exhibited, and a lot of it has been sold now.
Yeah.
Because it was a method of getting Norman's name out there.
That's right.
As we'll discuss later. So before the age of 15, all we've got really is the sketches and paintings and things until he joined the Burslem School of Art.
Well, I believe he was an apprentice designer, wasn't he, at Spode? Is that right?
He was, yes, but that was I think, putting a timeline to it. I think that came during his time at the Burslem School of Art.
Ah, right, okay, I see.
Right, I think during the closed season, if you like, or half term, I don't know what they had then, but he did work at Spode, and he did some paintings. Well, he used to paint plates.
Right.
I think if you read in one of Berry's book, The 3 and 7pence Halfpenny Man, he's quoted as saying he got fed up with painting flowers on paints.
Yeah, yeah.
We've still got some of those plates.
Have you? Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. we've got Well, we've got it in mind that one day we'll take them down to Spode and donate them to the Spode Museum.
Well, that's lovely. That's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, and I mean, there's one that he painted of Carnarvon Castle, for instance, which is really nice on a plate. But as I say, I think he was about 16 when he was at Spode. Right. Which was like after he joined the Burslem School of Art, which is where he met Arthur Berry. That's right. Well, it was apparently, I've read that it was 1938 that he was a student at the Burslem School of Art, and then he progressed from the junior art department in 1940. And that's where we obviously met Arthur Berry and John Hancock, who then, like you said, later was known as John Shelton, which kind of formed the Burslem Boys, really, is the sort of the trio. And obviously it was a really sort of golden era, wasn't it, for art at that point in the Potteries? Because I think a lot of the people who probably went to Burslem School of Art were perhaps going to go into ceramics in some degree and paint plates and paint whatever. So I think that suddenly you had these sort of students who were perhaps wanting to strive out and become painters and artists in their own right. And so it was like a golden generation, really, I think, at that point in Stoke. I mean, the other artist is William Bowyer. I think he was another one as well who was sort of, and he went on to be an RA as well, I think, of course, and he was a student there. I've got one letter from William Bowyer.
Oh, have you? Right, okay.
Well, it was only a short letter.
Right.
In fact, William Boyer used to live in Leek, where I live. And,
right.
He lived in I only found out from the letter, and I've still got the envelope, that he lived on a place called Daisy Bank. I think his house has been knocked down now, but he developed, William Boyer did, and he had a studio in London.
That's right.
And he lived to a good old age, William Boyer did. And I think he only died recently, 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know.
Right. I mean, he became an RA, and he was a very well thought of artist. I think,
he became. I think he did quite well for himself, William Boyer.
Yeah, definitely.
But interestingly, the letter that he sent to Norman was just, hope everything's going okay in Edinburgh. What are the women like up there?
Fair enough.
It was a short letter, but I mean, sometime one of these days you can see these letters, Ant, because they really.
Honestly, I'd love to see them. I really sort of.
I've got a full folder here, but very interesting. So William Boyer was one of the, and there was also during a period where I was trying to get information, I had a letter from a lady who lived in Melbourne, Australia. I was looking at it this morning,
right,
and she was actually there when Norman and Berry and Hancock and Boyer were at the School of Art, but she was 2 years younger, apparently.
Okay.
But it was a nice little letter. It was a nice little letter, basically saying that she could see Norman, who wandered around the School of Art dressed in black. He was very quiet, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But it's good, it's good that she, in fact, it was a sister who took the time to send. There was a newspaper cutting at the time, and she sent the newspaper cutting over to Australia, and the lady responded directly to me. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Vanessa, somebody, I can't remember. I've got the name and the letter, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, of course, when he was at the school as well. He was highly thought of, I think, as well. When he was at the school, I mean, his teacher there was Reginald Hagger, and I think he thought a lot of Norman. And he won various prizes there as well, didn't he? And I've seen bits and pieces to do with prizes that he won while he was there, to do with figure composition and the abstract art prize and things like that. He was first prize. He was second prize in portraiture, which was behind William Boyer as well. That was I think he was in first place. But so he was like extremely talented and well thought of while he was studying there as a student. He was like,
right. Yeah. I've got lists of his works here. He used to list his works, and he used to put the prices against them. All in guineas at the time, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And notes against which ones he didn't want selling, and notes of ones where he'd won prizes. I mean, one of my favourites is which he won first prize for. I'm not sure in what category. It's called "Noisy Laughter of the Fool."
Right.
That was. It was a savage drawing of a drunken soldier sitting in a bar surrounded by people, and he was holding a pint pot. Right. And Norman was a pacifist. He wasn't. He didn't like the war, but he did these drawings to depict the horrors of war and the vulgarity of it all. And there was a lot of others.
But looking through his drawings myself, obviously you can see stuff online. I know from Bearwall on their website and stuff, you can see a lot of his drawings that were sold. They kind of remind me, Henry Moore, the artist Henry Moore and sculptor, had an exhibition around the same sort of time. Really, it was in 1942. It was at the National Gallery. And it was of his shelter drawings, which were sort of these people, hoard up in shelters during the bombing raids and stuff in London.
Yeah.
And if you look at the drawings, you can sort of see elements of perhaps. I was always wondering whether. Well, I have wondered whether Norman maybe saw them at some point, because it was literally that was 1942, and then literally in 1943, you see in works like Sleepers and Insomnia and things like that. That Copey did. I think there possibly is some
I'll be honest, Anthony. It's quite possible that artists they thrived off other artists.
Yeah.
I'm sure Berry thrived off other people.
Oh, just
yeah, exactly. I'm sure Norman did.
Yeah,
I'm sure Norman did, and it's quite possible that he took his lead from Henry Moore. It's quite
his work as well. It's sort of in such a short period of time. He went from he was you could see elements of surrealism to Kerrico, and then he moved on to sort of more abstract pieces as well, I think, as well, which is it's all really, I mean, yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I believe I did read that he wasn't keen on the fact that Arthur Berry was a big fan of L.S. Lowry. I don't think he thought too much of Lowry.
No, I think they had a dispute over that.
It's quite interesting. Yeah,
they had a dispute over that. But I mean, if everybody's were the same, wouldn't it be a boring world?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, I don't think Norman was a Lowry fan, but I'm sure Berry was, inspired by Lowry. Yeah, I think they find an artist who's doing some work, and they'll go down that route and try and create their own style from going down that route.
That's it. It's amazing the amount of stuff that you have got on Norman. It's incredible, because we'll probably discuss it a bit later on, but there's an Arthur Berry book due out later on this year, and the research part of it, certainly in the very early part of Berry's life, has been quite a bit more difficult. Obviously, you have the book that he wrote. I mean, with regards to paintings and things like that, because there's not that too much early stuff at all that actually exists of Berry. And the story is that he destroyed a lot of it, unfortunately. Yeah, he destroyed.
He had one of these. He had one of these fits, which a lot of artists have, where he thought, I'm no good, and he destroyed a lot of his work.
Yeah, I know.
So there is not. I don't think there's a lot of early Berry work around.
No,
there's got to be some, but I wouldn't have thought there's a lot, because I mean, from what I've found out, he woke up one day, had a fit, and destroyed a lot of his. Burnt most of his work. What a tragedy, really.
Oh, it is, because I mean the early paintings that you see are like from the 50s. I mean 1956 or 58 is a really early Arthur Berry, and yet I mean, you've got work by Norman from the 40s. And before. But it's and they were born like the same year, I think, weren't they? I think they were born 90. Yeah, around.
I think they were the same age.
Same age. Yeah, I think Shelton was a year or two older, wasn't he? I think
so. Yeah, Shelton was a bit older.
That's right.
Trying to think when Berry died.
In 94 it was Berry. Yeah,
94.
Yeah, 94, and then I think Shelton died maybe a year or so before then. I think Berry just sort of outlived him by a year. Interestingly, one thing with Berry as well, I think he did mention it in his book that he wrote, was that when he first saw like Norman's work, he was a bit nervous about not getting into the art school in the first place, because I think he was sort of blown away by his talent, and I think a lot of people were, I think, as well.
Yeah. Well, I think in the book, Arthur Berry talks about seeing they went for the examination, the entrance examination, and Berry thought he'd done a really good job of painting his old favourite, as he called it, the ocean liner. Bear in mind, we're talking about guys that are 15 years old here. He saw what Norman had done, and Norman had painted a Canadian Pacific locomotive with a cow catcher on the front, steaming away with the sunset in the background.
Yeah.
And I think it demoralised Arthur a little bit, because he thought, goodness me, it puts my ocean liner to shame. But obviously, Arthur was, he put himself down a little bit. I mean, I actually spoke to him about this, and he said on the bus on the way home, he was convinced that he wouldn't pass his entrance exam, but he'd only seen one other painting, and that was Norman's.
Right.
But Norman's father, which was my grandfather,
who
I never met because he died a year before, 1 or 2 years before Norman.
Yeah.
He was a train driver. So Norman had grown up painting trains and locomotives. So we've still got sketches of locomotives that Norman did when he was, 12, 13. And they're good, But so, I mean, he didn't have anything to worry about, because he got accepted anyway, didn't he? Well, they both got accepted.
Yeah, of course they did.
So it was early days, yeah.
That's it.
But that's when we first met, yeah.
And after that, in 1943, after he'd finished at the Burslem School of Art, he was accepted to Edinburgh College of Art, which was, he got a scholarship, I think, didn't he? Was that right? Andrew Grant Scholarship?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Yes, he did. Yeah.
To get in,
he got an Andrew Grant. I don't know much about that. In fact, I didn't know anything about it until I spoke to a guy who was researching John Hancock.
Right, okay.
John Shelton, a guy named Mark Finney, who's also an Arthur Berry fan. He's got some of Arthur's work.
Yes.
And it was through him that we together we started doing more research. Myself and Mark, and my sister was involved, obviously.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, the years between 1940 and 1943, which was when they were at the School of Art, were years that they remember really well. You know, wandering the streets of Burslem. You know, the first interactions with girls. They weren't old enough to go in pubs, so they just wandered the streets, talking about art, and they were developing their own style and dress and things like that. You know, so I think they were great days. I mean, Burslem then was totally different to what it is today. I don't know. You've been to Burslem, haven't you?
Yeah. I've been loads of times. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, even in my time, I've seen Burslem deteriorate. I mean, in Stoke-on-Trent, it's called the mother town.
Yeah.
But it's a shadow of what it used to be. I mean, every other house in Burslem was a pub.
That's right. I mean, it's incredible. The Lament of the Lost Pubs of Burslem, the Arthur Berry, and he can just name these unbelievable amount of pubs, and then his enthusiasm about it, about sort of, you know, how unbelievable it is that you could have this many pubs in like such a small area. It's just like unbelievable.
I've listened to that Lament of the Lost Pubs, and he goes on and on about all these pubs, but he actually missed one, you know, which was I think it was called a Leopard or something.
Right. Okay.
And I said you met Ray Johnson, who does talkings on Arthur Berry, and he does the poems and things like that. But I've spoke to Ray about that, you know, and but there was so many, and he was going so fast. I might be wrong, but I'll have to listen to it again. I've got a CD.
Yeah, I've got it as well. It's really, I recommend that for anybody listening. Bearwall has a number of books and DVDs and CDs and things relating to Arthur Berry, which are brilliant.
Yeah.
I love them. I mean, the Ray Johnson DVD that he did on Berry himself brought together all the various bits of, you know, everything, all the sources that, you know, for everything had all brought together on one DVD. It's amazing. You couldn't want more, really.
I mean, Ray Johnson's a great bloke. I think he knows everything about Arthur Berry. I mean, he's I don't know whether he's still working, but he used to be head of archives. I haven't seen Ray for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
But he was head of archives, I think, at Stoke University.
Yeah.
And I've been to 1 or 2 of his presentations down there about Arthur Berry, and you're transfixed. He's fantastic, Ray is.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
He's really interesting.
Yeah. But as I say, getting back to what we were talking about, Burslem, it's now compared to what it was, it's nothing.
Right.
It's nothing compared to what it was. It was, you know, it was the hub of the potteries, if you like. And, As Arthur Berry used to say, it was better than Barcelona.
But He did say that. I mean, I know, like, they are. I mean, Bearwall and people, they are, you know, trying to bring things back and trying encouraging things, and hopefully, you know, hopefully in the future. I mean, it won't obviously have that sense of. You won't have as many pubs anyway, for starters.
No.
But, you know, hopefully, you know, bringing more culture back. And I know they do things like the Arthur Berry walks and things, and they're all interesting. I think things like that are really good. So we'll get back onto Norman now. So it was 1943. He's accepted to Edinburgh College of Art. He got his scholarship, the Andrew Grant Scholarship, which I believe was £60 for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then that was, you know, off he went. And then, of course, the other Burslem boys, Arthur Berry was accepted at the Royal College of Art, which was based in, of course, London. But in this time, it was wartime. And so that had been moved up to Ambleside. So he had to go up to Ambleside during the war, which is interesting within itself. And that's something that is going to be mentioned quite heavily in the book, I believe. Yeah. And then Shelton was accepted to the Slade.
Yes, it's not bad from a town of the size of Burslem.
That's it. Three lads from Burslem there. They've done all right, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, at the time of all this, this happening back in 1943, I don't think Hancock had actually gone to the Slade at that time, or he went later than Berry and Norman. So I've got not much knowledge about Hancock going to the Slade, but I will say that Mark Finney will have a detailed history of Hancock. Yeah, he's very knowledgeable, Mark is. But yes, in fact, that's how I got to know a lot about what was going on.
Yeah, you can see his blog online, can't you? I think it's
that's right.
Finbo, I think it is Finbo.
That's right. Yeah, and he the way where I learned a little bit about it, and I contacted him, Mark, was I just Googled one. I was working away. I lived in Romania for 6 years, and I just sitting there bored one night and Googled Norman Cope, and up come all this stuff that Mark Finney was researching.
It's amazing, that.
You know, and that put me on the case to try a bit harder, if you like.
Yeah.
And so Mark Finney's worth talking to. He's a good bloke, Mark. Yeah, he's a Berry fan. Yeah, he's a Berry fan.
Me too.
He's got 3 or 4 of Norman's paintings as also.
Oh, has he? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, he's got Hancock, Berry, and Norman's. He's got some from each. Yeah.
Right, okay. Wow, that's amazing. Well, so Cope, I mean, obviously, like you say, he was dressing like an artist at this point. He had his dark suit, his tie, his parted hair. And his work, I believe, at that point, because obviously he would have started there in 1943, possibly in September or whenever he would have started. And then he was becoming a little bit more abstract, his work at that point as well. And there was a teacher called John Maxwell, who I've read about, who was quite an influence on him at that point, I think.
That's right, yeah.
In the other period.
I think he went to Edinburgh, obviously sometime in 1943.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how long he was there, probably 4 or 5 months. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah.
But during that time in Edinburgh, a lot of letters were exchanged. This was the time of the letters, really.
Yes.
When they were all apart, you know, they all went their separate ways. So, you know, it's not like today where you log onto the internet and you send them a text or do whatever. It was letters.
It's true.
And obviously these letters that I recovered and then opened in 1990, I've only got one side of the story, Anthony, you see. And the side of the story I've got is Arthur Berry's side, John Hancock and various other people, William Boyer, because I never saw the letters that Norman had wrote to them.
Yeah, of course.
All I saw was the letters that I recovered, which Norman hadn't written. Mm-hmm. The only thing I got, really, in trying to piece things together was the envelopes that the letters were sent in. Because back in those days, paper was very scarce, you know. Paper was very scarce. It's not like today where you can just go down the road and buy a load of A4 paper and do whatever you want. And on all these letters, especially the envelopes, there's things where he's practicing his paintings, or notes that he's making, or ideas that he's got for the future. Like one of the things that he was working on, Norman was working on when he died, was something that Arthur referred to called the endless monotony of existence.
Right.
Now that was unfinished. Never saw anything or recovered anything on that one.
Right.
But there was many others. You know, the girl without a pretty face springs to mind, for instance. And there's others that I've got written down somewhere. But these letters, these envelopes, are covered in scrawls and drawings and where he'd been practicing. And we've got one where he was practicing Adam and Eve. You know, which was probably his most famous painting.
That's right. I've seen that one. I've seen the that was in the exhibition, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That one?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that was what was going on at that's when they were exchanging the letters back in the latter half of 1943.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Berry would have been sending from Ambleside.
That's right. Yeah.
Did Cope? Did they go and visit Berry in Ambleside then at all at any point?
No, they did it the other way round. They actually went to Edinburgh.
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure the exact date. I've probably got it somewhere with the date on the letter, you know. But I mean, interestingly, Berry was a terrible writer. He's a bit like a doctor, you know. And I had to translate most of his letters. You can just about make them out; they're okay.
Yeah.
But he got a letter back from Norman one day, and I think it said it was full of the richness of Edinburgh and how he was enjoying his life. And Berry was not happy, I don't think, in Ambleside.
Yeah.
He was not happy with his fellow students there for some reason, and it's well documented, I think.
Yeah.
But he went up to Edinburgh, Berry did, and Hancock, Shelton, as it is now, Hancock followed him up the day after, and they spent a few days in Edinburgh walking around, and I think it's well documented in Berry's book.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the famous things when they were in Edinburgh was because when Berry arrived in Edinburgh back then, I think it was November '43.
Yeah.
It was foggy, and Berry didn't know where he was going, and he ended up at some hospice, sleeping the night. He went into the toilet, and there was
it was the Salvation Army, wasn't it? I think was it
Salvation Army? That's it. Yeah, couldn't remember. Salvation Army, and he went into the cubicle, and there was a hole etched out in the door, and there was an image of a guy with his hand around this hole, as if he was holding his penis, and underneath it said, "I am nobody." And when he met up with Norman the next day, he told Norman about this, image on the back of the door, and Norman a few days later went down and sketched it for himself. Yeah, and they had a good time in Edinburgh, I think, and that was the last time they were together before the Christmas reunion. They went back home, and I think it's well documented that when Hancock got back to the Burslem School of Art, I think he still had links there. Reginald Hagger got hold of him and wanted to know everything that was going on, because Hagger was he's got to take a lot of credit for that period in time, because he was head of art in the Potteries, I think.
That's right.
Not sure what his exact title was.
Yes. So it's obviously, like you say, 1943, and then they were having this event, this ball, this Christmas ball or whatever, reunion ball or whatever it was at Burslem School of Art. And so, Arthur Berry come down from Ambleside, and John Shelton obviously was there, and Norman Cope had come as well from Edinburgh to join this. And this was in December, wasn't it? 1943. This happened. And so,
it was quite close to Christmas.
Oh, was it?
I've got the exact date somewhere.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was. I think it was about 18th, 19th of December. I think it was.
It was something like that. Yeah, it was something like. I've got the date somewhere, but yeah, they came down, and it was the first time they got together since they all went their separate ways.
Yeah,
and I think they just obviously, they let themselves go a little bit, I suppose. As young men do.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it was the first time they were, it was different then, because they could go into pubs, for instance. Previously, they were wandering around the streets, sitting on park benches, eating fish and chips, Yeah, but now they were old enough. They were 18. They could go in pubs legally.
Yeah.
I mean, back then, Burslem was a really popular town. The pubs were heaving, not like nowadays.
Yeah.
So, they had a good time.
That's right. Yes. And then, of course, the very tragic event happened, didn't it? You're probably better telling the story than me, Michael, I think, as to what happened.
Well, I mean, I've only got, the story. My father never spoke about it.
Right.
My father identified the body.
Right.
And he went up and recovered everything from Edinburgh.
That's right.
All Norman's work from Edinburgh. But he never spoke really about the night of the accident. But it's quite obvious, really, with research and talking to Arthur and people. They went out. They were drunk.
Yeah,
they were drunk. They went out and had a drink. I believe Norman was not too well earlier in the day, and he thought a whiskey or something might improve his, the way he felt.
Yeah.
They met up with some girls who, and that increased the euphoria of the night. And they went around a few of the pubs in Burslem. And I know one was the George Hotel that they went in. I think another one they went in was the Leopard, which I think, I stand corrected, I think was possibly the one that Berry missed on his, the pubs going. But I'm going to check that out tomorrow now I've said that. Because I might be wrong. But they went in a few other pubs. Might have been the Dolphin. I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, they went round these pubs, and of course the end game was to arrive back at the School of Art and finish the night off, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know whether they got a plan to stay there or go home or whatever, but by the end of the night, they were certainly in no fit state to go home. And getting home from Burslem Norman lived in Fenton, or Norman's mother lived in Fenton. Berry was living, I think, in Biddulph at the time, and Hancock was in Shelton.
Yeah.
So how they would have got home at that late time. Anyway, Norman was talking, in an agitated state to some guys who Berry didn't know, and all of a sudden ran up the stairs. And I don't know whether he'd been in Burslem Art College, but he ran up the stairs to get, we presume, to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
Whether running up the stairs caused him to, go lightheaded, but he toppled over backwards, fell down to the foot of the stairs. All the people assumed that he was drunk, and he just wanted to cool off. They put his head under the cold water tap, as probably we would do, to try and sober him up. Yeah. However, it was the wrong thing to do, we learned later. Mm-hmm. But at that time, we were still at war. And in the Burslem School of Art, in one of the front rooms, I think they'd got mattresses where what they call the fire watchers used to sleep on.
That's right, yeah.
And the two, Berry and Hancock, dragged Norman in and dropped him down on one of these fire watching mattresses. Yeah. Berry fell down on the next one and went off to sleep in a drunk. Everybody was drunk. But I'm sure Norman was drunk. But he woke up the next day and noticed, a little bit of saliva, and he noticed that Norman was, his eyes were open, and he looked, as though he was not moving. Well, he wasn't moving, obviously. And it was then that they realised that he was dead. Yeah, he died. And that was it. I think Berry, it was one of the biggest shocks in Berry's life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. He actually thinks that he suffered from agoraphobia. I'm sure Arthur Berry. Yes. He actually, in one of his letters to me, he actually puts down to probably one of the, the shock of that being one of the biggest things that causes the state of agoraphobia within him. Yeah. But anyway, it was Christmas time.
Yeah, it's awful. Absolutely. He was 18, wasn't he, as well? He was only 18.
He was 18, yeah. He was 18.
Gosh.
And then, of course, they had to go through. I was surprised that the inquest was so quick. Nowadays, they spend time gathering all the information, but it was quite quick, the inquest was. Just after Christmas. I've got the cuttings of the report in the Evening Sentinel.
I've got it here. The Evening Sentinel, the article. Shall I read it out? Do you think that'd be worth reading it? Yeah. It's quite a long piece, but I'll read it if you like. It only gets to a point as well. It is on the Mark Finney website that I found it. So I know, right. So I'll read it from the start. So the headline was "Death of Art Student Fall Downstairs." Fatal injuries were received by an 18-year-old Fenton art student in a sad accident which occurred at the Burslem School of Art on Saturday night following an art students' reunion party. He was Norman Cope of 66 Wells Street, Fenton, a former pupil at Burslem School of Art and more recently attending the Royal College of Art, Edinburgh. He attended the reunion with two companions and at about 10:15 p.m. was running up the stairs at the art school when he slipped near the top of the stairs and fell backwards. He was helped to bed by his companions who were not aware that he was suffering from an injury, but Cope succumbed to the results of the fall on Sunday morning. His death was due to a fractured skull. The inquest. At the inquest in Hanley this afternoon, Mr. Stanley Cope, brother, who's obviously your dad, of 66 Wells Street, Fenton, said his brother had returned home for the Christmas vacation. Deceased friend Arthur Berry of 165 Congleton Road, Biddulph, an art student at the Royal College of Art and formerly of the Burslem School of Art, said that after tea, Cope, who had only had a cup of tea and a cake, informed him that he was not feeling well and later suggested that they should go out and have a drink as a pick-me-up. They went to the George Hotel about 6 p.m. and had some whiskey and rum. They returned about 6:20 p.m., Cope remarking that he felt much better. During the evening, he said they had several drinks, returning to the school at about 10:15 p.m. with another friend, John Hancock, obviously John Shelton, a Burslem art student of 98 Ashford Street, Shelton. They found nearly all the guests had departed. Cope later tried to run up the stairs 2 or 3 at a time. When nearly at the top, he seemed to collapse and fall backwards down the stairs. Witnesses went to his assistance and spoke to him, but received no coherent reply. With the help of John Hancock, they carried him into the metal room and laid him down on a fire watcher's bed. neither of them suspecting that he was seriously injured. There was no bleeding nor sign of a wound. As deceased was practically a teetotaler, they thought that probably the drinks had upset him a little. They applied cold water, and Cope partially revived and said, "Oh, Berry, stop it." He then lay back on the bed and apparently went to sleep. Witness and his companion then decided to stay the night at the school. The discovery. About 9 o'clock next morning, said witness, he was aroused by Hancock, who had been sleeping in another room and who drew his attention to Cope, who was looking very ill. John Hancock stated that he heard someone apparently falling down the stairs while he was in the toilet, and on going outside, he found the previous witness bending over Cope. R.G. Hagger, obviously Reginald Hagger, master in charge of the Burslem School of Art, said that the stairs were well arranged and in excellent condition. Cope was a student of temperate habits and looked happy when he left the party at 8:30 p.m. Medical evidence. Dr. J.G. Datham of Hamlet gave evidence of the performing a post-mortem examination. In reply to the coroner, Dr. Datham said that Cope's skull was thinner than normal and was more likely to fracture than in the average case. The cause of death was a hemorrhage due to a fractured base of the skull. The coroner returned a verdict of accidental death following a fall when ascending a staircase. He expressed deep sympathy for the bereaved family, as also did Mr. Gordon M. Forsyth, Superintendent of Art Instruction for Stoke-on-Trent, who attended the inquest, and Mr. J. Mee, representing the City Corporation. The coroner, referring to the evidence given by Berry and Hancock, said that each young man had done what he thought was the best in Cope's interest, and had they had any suspicion that their companion was seriously injured, undoubtedly they would have. And that's where the article ends at that point. So there you go. That's sort of, it's exactly what you said, isn't it? So that's the story of the whole thing. So so that was in obviously 1943. And of course, his parents, and it must have been like, it must have been an absolute tragedy for the family and everything at that point, I would imagine.
Well, there's a big void then from 1943 to 1970, really.
Right.
Because other than the funeral, which was held in Wells Street, Fenton, which is now called Welby Street, Fenton, by the way. They changed the name of it. I don't know why. Wells Street, 66 Wells Street, Fenton. That's actually where I was born. Right. It actually states that at the funeral, the mother actually gave out a sketch to each of the people who attended the funeral.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure which ones. I've got no history on that one.
Yeah.
But from there, really, he was buried in Fenton Cemetery. Yeah. Along with his father, who died either 1 or 2 years before my grandfather, who I never met. But then the year after Norman died, his sister died. Evelyn. And unbelievably, in 1944, she was involved in a road accident. Oh. She was run over by a car, or hit by a car in Longton.
Wow.
And the amazing coincidence is it's actually close to a gallery that was run by Arthur's wife in later years. But anyway, she was hit by this car and she died. Wow. So basically, in the 3 years, 3 of the family died. It just left my grandmother and my father. Yeah. Wow. And in 1970, when my grandmother died, she went in the same grave. So there's four people in that grave. Yeah. In Fenton, which went unmarked. Back then, they got no money. So there was nothing there to mark the grave, other than you had to go to the local office to find out the grave number and where it was. So from there to 1970, when my grandmother died, because she was still living in Wells Street, Fenton. There's nothing. Right. As you would expect, she locked the paintings away and put everything out of mind. The only thing that reminded us of Norman was a couple of small sketches that she had on the wall. Yeah. And we as children used to say, well, what are these? Well, they were your Uncle Norman's, and this, and that was all. And it wasn't until later years that when I started researching it that I found out everything that was going on. Yeah. So there was a big void between there and 1970, and then there was another void between 1970 and 1988 when my father died. They were transferred from one storage unit to another storage unit. Yeah, and then myself and my sister Ellen started getting getting involved and started trying to sort it out, you know, what went on and the history of it all.
Yeah. It's incredible. And then obviously, like you said, you were looking up a few years ago when you were living in Romania. You've mentioned that earlier on, and you found obviously the blog about him, and that other people obviously were sort of expressing interest. And I think that things like that probably fire your enthusiasm even more as well when other people are sort of showing interest as well. And so that sort of led you to deciding to do something about it, I suppose, as well. And did that lead automatically then onto the eventual exhibition that you had for Norman's work? That was in 2012, I think it was. You had an exhibition.
The Burslem Boys, October 2012.
Yeah.
When I sitting in Romania, I wasn't actually working in Romania. I'd finished working in Romania, but I do still go back there because I've got a son in Romania. So I still go back regularly to Romania. But I was just sitting one night, and for some reason, I just Googled Norman Cope, first time I'd ever done it. And the first thing that came up was the work that's in the art gallery in Hanley, the museum. There's some of Norman's work in there, donated by my father when he picked the work up. And also, Reginald Hagger donated some of Norman's work that he'd got to the museum. So there's some work in there donated by Hagger and some donated by my father. It's obviously owned by the museum.
Yes.
When you donate, I'm sure you know, it's their property then.
Yeah,
which is fair enough. I've been in and viewed it, and anybody can go in and view it if they make an appointment.
You can see those works online if you do search for obviously Norman Cope, and then if you search for Art UK after it, all one word, Art UK, it'll bring up, and I think there's maybe 2 or 3 on there. I'm not 100% sure, and one of them's like a nude male figure, and that's obviously in a part of the national collection of paintings, owned by everybody really. It's in the
that nude guy in there obviously was somebody at the Burslem School of Art used to get in.
Yeah.
We've got loads of sketches of him. Where Norman was practicing, before he actually did the painting. So my sister's got all his work.
Yeah.
I mean, when the last time I went to the museum, they were in a bit of a mess, and they were having trouble storing. There was 2 or 3 of Norman's work that were in there that they got documented, but they couldn't find them.
Right.
Whether they sorted themselves out in this time, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying that there was work to be done.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think it's the
it's of course it's hard, isn't it? I mean, there's so many cutbacks and at the moment
very hard. They were struggling for people, very hard.
Absolutely.
They got nobody to do the work. They got all the work, but they got nobody to store it. I mean, if you go in the museum in Hanley, there's so much stuff downstairs. It's unbelievable how much stuff they've got downstairs.
Yeah,
in the archives, and it's a massive job, especially with cutbacks and stuff.
Absolutely.
To do the work, but they're in there somewhere, and I'm sure
they're in there. That's
yeah.
It. So it was 2012 was the exhibition, and of course we will mention now, I suppose. So Bearwall Gallery. Anybody listening who isn't aware of Bearwall, is a gallery in Burslem set up by Amanda and Paula. It's a fantastic gallery and really sort of champions and is extremely passionate and proud about the local area. More so than most galleries that I've ever visited. They're so enthusiastic about Stoke and about Burslem.
Absolutely.
And so they managed to start selling the work of Arthur Berry, quite a few years ago with Cynthia and the estate. And they do an excellent job with that, with promoting his work. And then they had all various exhibitions, and then things, I suppose, just fall in your lap when you're doing things like that. Because if you put yourself online and you've got this presence, and suddenly that there's a gallery out there selling work by Arthur Berry, then people associated with Arthur Berry, which obviously was Norman Cope and John Shelton and whatnot, will just sort of, when it comes up, they'll be the gallery that you approach. And obviously that was what must have happened. And so the exhibition, the Burslem Boys, Bearwall was of course the perfect setting for it to have that, and that was in 2012. So how did that go? Was it a good exhibition at that time?
It was brilliant. I mean, it was very emotional for us. I mean, going back in time now, it was Mark Finney once again, who you've read his blogs. It was Mark Finney who got an association with Bearwall. I'd never heard of. I'd never heard of them.
Wow.
But when I started getting involved, in another amazing coincidence, I found out that Paula, who I'm sure you've met,
Yes.
used to go to school with my daughter,
Right.
and they were in the same class.
Small world.
Very small world. I mean, they're great girls, Paula and Amanda. And of course, that began a great association, if you like, with me and Bearwall. I call in, if I'm passing through, I call in. Yeah. But they were great. And we came up with this idea of having a joint exhibition, which Bearwall were absolutely brilliant. They, and Mark Finney did a lot of work. Obviously, we got Norman's work. We were just proud to have Norman's work on show, if you like.
Yeah.
I think we exhibited, because bear in mind, I mean, Bearwall, the exhibition place is not that big, so you were limited to what you could put up. I think we had about a dozen pieces of Norman's work.
Yeah.
And most of them we didn't want to sell, like Adam and Eve. We didn't want to sell it. We didn't want to sell Suicide Baskin. We didn't want to sell Jacob and the Angel. Mm-hmm. And we put 3 or 4 pieces up, which we said we'd sell.
Yeah.
We just wanted to get his work out there, really. And we were astonished that they sold.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I was emotional. My sister couldn't contain my sister. She was so emotional about it, and but it was a great night for us, the Burslem boys, and it got us to know at this stage, Shelton, or Hancock's wife, was still alive.
Right.
So it got us to meet Shelton's wife. Barry's wife couldn't come for some reason, although I haven't met her a few times since. Yeah. But it was a great night, and we had various things there. We had Barry's bloody paint brushes and all sorts of stuff. It was, I think we've got loads of photographs of the night.
Yeah.
And it was a great night for us. Very, very emotional to put Norman's work up after all these years and to, repatriate him with his colleagues, although they were all dead.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great night. It was a fantastic night. Yeah.
And then you had the solo exhibition then, didn't you? Was that 2014? Was that a couple of years later?
It was 2014, March 2014, Copy. Yeah. And obviously we were then beginning to think people had told us you need to get some work out there and people were approaching us to buy work and stuff like that. We were more interested in getting a stone on Norman's grave.
Right.
Because there was no stone on Norman's grave in Fenton Cemetery. So that was the major objective, and they're not cheap. And we wanted to really.
That's a really nice thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were spurred on by that, and Bearwall were absolutely brilliant. Paula and Amanda were fantastic. Yeah. And we started putting this exhibition together. And then I think it was Paula who phoned me up one night and suggested that, because she knew all about the letters, we'd got the letters on show at the exhibition, and all sorts of things, the original letters. And I think it was Paula who phoned me one night and said, we could do something with all this information. It was Paula's idea to come up with a dramatised reading, but obviously she hadn't got the information. I'd got the information.
Yeah.
Well, I was, I'd got access to all the information and I got the history. So Paula suggested that we came up with this, on the night of the Copy exhibition, we'd do this reading. And this is when I met Ray Johnson. Paula set me off on my way. So I wasn't working at the time. I'd finished work. And I just started writing. And I decided that I was just going to start writing and I wasn't going to finish. I wasn't going to stop writing until I'd finished. I wasn't going to have a gap. So I just started writing. And when I was tired, I went to sleep. Didn't matter about the time. When it was tired, I went to sleep. The wine helped, I must say. So I can't remember how long it took me. But I wrote it all out. I mean, I've got to say it was very raw when I finished. I'm not a writer, although I'd like to be. But I wrote it all out, and when I presented it to Paula, she read it through, and she said, you need to go and see Romy Cheeseman, who's the wife of Peter Cheeseman. I'm sure you've heard of Peter.
Yeah, he was
Um,
obviously in charge of the Old Vic, wasn't he? The
the
theatre.
old bit. He was responsible for dramatising a lot of the plays that Berry wrote,
That's right.
which was brilliant, brilliant. And Romy was fantastic. She read through it and said, "Yeah, I think we've got something here. Needs a bit of fine tuning, but we can do something with this." And she said, "You need to come again." But she lived very close to the New Vic, Romy,
Right.
and she said you need to come again, and we'll invite Ray down, Ray Johnson, who's as you know, is a bloody Berry fan through and through.
Yeah.
Ray came down the next time. I think we had 3 or 4 meetings. My sister came with us a few times. It was then that we started to critique it and turn it into I think so. Quite a good dramatised reading, which I think
it's fantastic. Yeah. It was absolutely fantastic. So this was what you did was, I believe, is that you incorporated chunks of obviously Arthur Berry's book and the letters, and you sort of blended them fairly seamlessly together into this dramatization sort of reading, really, which was incredible. And then you performed it on the night at Bearwall during, I guess, one of the events around the Copy exhibition. And you had a crowd of people there, and then various people playing the parts of one person being Hancock and one being Copy, and Ray Johnson, of course, was Arthur Berry, and reading bits of dialogue from the letters, and there was a narrator and thing. It was fantastic, and you can see this online because it is available online. Maybe I'll post a link. I'll post a link somewhere. You can see it on YouTube. It's well worth watching. It's fantastic. It's so interesting and enjoyable. I really enjoyed it a lot. It's very good.
Ray and Romy made it really because they came up with ideas that I would never have thought of.
Right.
Because I wrote it just from start to finish.
Yeah.
And Romy was chipping away in the background. Do this, do that. And I think it was Ray Johnson that came up with the idea of splitting it into 3,
right,
and having him acting out Berry, another guy acting out Hancock. But we couldn't have anybody acting Norman because we didn't have any of Norman's words. Right. So we came up with the narrator, which was David.
Yes.
And he was like Norman in the background.
Yeah.
And then the piece that you read out earlier about the inquest, I put all the words in like you read out, but Ray took a lot out.
Right.
He said the audience will be bored if you put all that lot in. So he picked out the bits that were
of course.
Well, it's wrong to say interesting, but the bits that people were more interested in and stuff like that. And there was a lot of other fine tunes. So although I wrote it, Ray was the one who made it what it was.
Yeah.
And then on the night, I thought the 3 of them did a fantastic job. On the night,
it was amazing.
And we didn't have many practice runs. I think we only had 1 practice run.
Well, you did that. You did a very good job.
Yeah, I was so emotional I could hardly speak.
Oh,
but and all my family was there. And
yeah. Oh, that's incredible. And then, of course, the exhibition went very well as well, I believe, because I guess you kept some back, and then you sold an awful lot, though, I think.
There was a lot sold. Yeah, we wanted to get it out there and get it sold, and from the proceeds, basically, goodness me, we got the stone. Yeah. We had a reception. And with what was left over, we all went on a family holiday.
Yeah, why not? That's it.
So it was well spent.
Yeah,
it was well spent, and we remembered Norman on the holiday, and it was good. And I'm just glad that we got the stone on there. Really,
of course.
Anybody can go down and see it. It's in Fenton Cemetery. It's a fairly new stone. Fenton's an old cemetery, so it sticks out a bit,
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good.
Well done. I've said to you as well, what you should do. I think you were considering this. I think Ray Johnson suggested it to you as well. You need to get something written. You need to publish the letters in some and do a sort of just basically get the letters from Berry and from Shelton and the various and tell the whole story. I think in one.
Well,
in a book.
I'll be honest. It's been on my to-do list for a few years now.
Yeah.
It's
you're clearly good enough to do it. The way that you brought that together, that dramatization, and I think you've got the skill and the ability. It's a fantastic thing, and I think it's well worth doing.
I mean, it's not for money. It's for history, really, and legacy.
Well, that's it. That's what what these things always are for.
Yeah. No. I mean, Ray. Every time I see Ray, he says, "Have you done that booklet?" He goes into booklets. Ray does.
Yes.
And but I think you contacting me is spurred me into action again. To be honest, and I made a mental note that I'm going to start writing again soon. But once I start writing, I don't stop.
Right.
Like last time. I'll just keep going. Day and night. When I'm tired, I'll sleep, whatever time of day it is. Then I'll wake up and continue writing.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll be a big booklet or book or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because he died so young.
Yeah. I mean, the potential in him, the potential of him at that age, because like I said, I touched on it earlier, that you can see these sort of different aspects of his work, and it was all in this sort of such a fleeting sort of moment in, it was only a few years, from when he started at Burslem and he must have only been in Edinburgh 6 months or something, if that. It was
probably less than that, Anthony. I've been trying to. I'm sure I've got the. If I look at the letters, I'm sure I've got the dates of when he went and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was probably between 3 and 5 months.
Yeah, it's nothing
in Edinburgh. And he was in I mean, goodness knows what it was like back then. But I think he was sharing a place. I've actually been to Bread Street in Edinburgh. I haven't actually been in the building, but I can see the window that I've seen the window of where he was lodging.
Right.
And because there's a painting of a back street of Edinburgh that he did through the window.
I've seen that. Did you sell that one, or did you keep that one?
I'm not sure. I think it's gone now.
Yeah, I did.
He did that through his back window, and you can see the back window. You go down a little archway, and there's a little car park, scruffy little place.
Yeah.
And you actually see where he did the painting from. Yeah. But he wasn't happy there, Anthony. He wasn't happy. There was a load of letters, and I mean, there was letters from a sailor named John who he befriended, who was. His ship was moored in Edinburgh. It was a destroyer. I've never been able to find out the name of the destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
It was moored in Edinburgh, and the letters that he exchanged with John obviously indicate that he was completely unhappy with where he was staying.
Yeah,
and there's a load of letters which letters coming back to Norman this again. Offering him accommodation at ridiculously low prices compared to today.
Yeah.
So he was obviously unhappy with where he was stopping.
Yeah.
And I think some of it was the fact that he was possibly sharing a room with somebody we never knew. Mm. And also the lighting in the room was not good enough for painting.
Right. Okay.
So there was issues like that.
Yeah.
But obviously he was still in Bread Street when he died. Well, he didn't die in Bread Street, but he was his work was still in Bread Street. Yeah, it's very close to the castle. Actually, very close to the castle.
Obviously, your dad picked all that up, didn't he? Your dad went and picked it
all up. Your dad did, yeah. He picked it all up and came down and locked it away, and that was it, really.
And that was the story, but it's an incredible story, and it's and it's it was something that is well worth telling. And even though he died at 18, he's still in a lot of people's memories, and of course in your family's memories. And then you did the exhibition, and I think it's well worth doing a book, and certainly with the letters and the amount. And it sounds like you have got a fair amount of material to work on. So I look forward to that in the future.
Well, to be honest, Anthony, you've spurred me into action now.
Well, I'll definitely come. I'll definitely come and see you at some point as well. When post everything sort of settling down at some point in the near future.
Well, to be honest, if you want, once we settle down, if you want, I've got a complete folder of Norman's work here. It's about 4 inches thick.
There you go.
There's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff in there that you might be interested in Arthur Berry early exhibitions and stuff like that. And
yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Newspaper cuttings. Yeah. We've obviously got the original photographs. And if you're doing this exhibition at the Brampton, then you're quite welcome to borrow any of the work we've got. Berry's, original letters, photographs for that exhibition.
That's amazing. That's just the so the exhibition you're referring to is the so when the book, there's an Arthur Berry book out due later this year, which is sort of 2021, around about, I think it's October, November time, being written by Peter Davis, and then the exhibition coincide with that is going to be at the Brampton. So obviously there'll be a number of Berry's works there and everything else. So so that's that's obviously via Bearwall as well. They've obviously commissioned Peter to write the book. So I'm really looking forward to reading that, to be honest with you, and getting.
Well, you've prompted me also to go in and see the girls, but I mean, I can't now, obviously, because of lockdown. But as soon as we're out of lockdown, I shall call in and see the girls.
Definitely, have a chat with them. I'm sure they'll listen to this when it's out and everything. So
yeah.
But thank you very much for speaking to me today, Michael. It's been incredible. I've really enjoyed it, and you're very lucky to have had such a talented uncle.
Yes, very very lucky, but. Never met him, and it's a sad story, really.
It is. It's a sad because it was so tragic because he was so young. Yeah. And I mean, when I hear of him, I'm a United fan, and obviously this was before my time, but it makes me think of like the Busby Bays and Duncan Edwards and people like that. Sort of everything's in front of them, isn't it? Like that, and then obviously, Manchester United. I'm a bit of a Manchester United fan as well. Oh, there you go. But yeah, right. Well, thank you very much for speaking to me, Michael, and I will catch up with you again soon. And all the best to you and your family, and I'll speak to you soon. Well, thank you very much, Anthony, and you've spurred me into action again. All right. Nice talking to you. Take care, pal. See you soon. Take care, mate. Bye. After recording the episode, I thought I should mention the 4 people who were involved in the dramatised reading. They were Michael Cope, Ray Johnson, Richard Murray, David Bowen, and of course Romy Cheeseman, who was involved in the creation of it. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. You can head to the Northern Art page on Facebook and on Instagram as well, where I'll upload some images relating to the episode. Any likes, comments, shares, messages, anything like that is always appreciated. You can also subscribe to the channel on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and then you won't miss out on any episodes that I upload in the future.